Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're stepping into the glittering, dangerous world of history's most insane royal feasts. Nights so extravagant they cost more than modern mansions. Nights where kings drowned their fear in oceans of gold and rivers of wine, and nights where entire empires slipped quietly toward collapse while the palace glowed brighter than the stars. This isn't just history for sleep. This is the soft, slow unraveling of power, told gently like a bedtime story, as we drift through halls of forgotten luxury, silent politics, and feasts grand enough to change the fate of kingdoms. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let your breath settle, let the noise of the day fall away, and follow me into a world where every candle, every whisper, and every feast hides a story waiting to be told. Before you fall asleep tonight, imagine this: a single royal dinner so extravagant, so wildly beyond reason, that its cost would overshadow the price of a modern mega mansion. Not a decade of feasts, not a year of celebrations, just one night, one table, one decision by a king who wanted the world to remember him not for wisdom, not for kindness, but for spectacle. As you settle into your pillow and your breath begins to slow, picture a long hall lit by soft oil lamps, their flames shivering gently against carved stone walls. The air is warm with spices you can almost smell, cinnamon drifting like a sigh, saffron glowing like late afternoon light, and honey melting into wine. This is the world of the wildest royal feasts, insane royal dinner parties where food was not just food, but a weapon of pride, a message carved into the night that said, "I rule so absolutely, I can afford to waste the wealth of nations on a single evening." And yet tonight, as you listen in the quiet, we're not here to judge them. We're simply here to drift beside them, just close enough to witness, far enough to remain safe in the calm of sleep. Think of an emperor preparing a feast not because he was hungry, but because silence frightened him. Empty halls made him feel mortal, so he filled them with musicians, dancers, and tables overflowing with roasted swans, jeweled goblets, and fountains of wine that never stopped flowing, not even at dawn. Imagine the soft footsteps of servants who had memorized every gesture of their ruler, knowing that even a drop of spilled sauce could cost them their future. But above that tension hung another truth: that many of these kings and queens weren't celebrating power, they were running from something. Loneliness, fear, the whisper that their reign was slipping through their fingers like grains of salt. So they drowned those thoughts in feasts that lasted from sundown to sunrise, banquets that turned night into a shimmering river of gold. And yet, if you could stand there, just for a moment, invisible in the shadows, you'd notice something unexpected. It wasn't loud, not in the way you'd imagine. The music was gentle, almost slow enough to lull a restless heart. The conversations were soft, drifting like warm embers in a fireplace. Even the laughter felt muted, as if the night itself was holding its breath. This wasn't chaos. It was a performance, a carefully designed dream meant to convince the world that its ruler had endless wealth, endless confidence, endless time. But history remembers differently. Many of these rulers paid for these feasts not with coins, but with allies they pushed away, enemies they provoked, and citizens who could never understand why a king needed a roasted peacock stuffed inside a swan, wrapped inside a goose, glistening with gold leaf, just to feel alive. As you lie here, breathing softly, let the idea settle. Every one of these feasts, every shimmering plate, every echoing hall, was built on a kind of quiet desperation mixed with impossible desire. A desire to be more than human, a desire to freeze a moment in time, a desire to say, "Look at me, look at my power," even if you never look again. But tonight, you and I look gently, without judgment. Because this is boring history for sleep, except the stories are anything but boring. And as you drift deeper into this soft night, you'll see that behind every insane royal banquet, there was always a softer, quieter truth waiting in the shadows. As you drift a little deeper into the quiet of your room, let your mind step softly into another hall, one far grander, far stranger, and built not for comfort, but for awe. Imagine a palace where the ceilings disappear into shadows because even torches cannot reach the top. Imagine a floor so polished it feels like moonlight poured itself into stone. And in the center of this hall sits a table, longer than the length of some ships, that glimmers as if the night sky folded itself into silver and gold. This was the stage for one of the most extravagant royal feasts ever recorded, a dinner so costly that historians still whisper about it like a myth. But tonight, you and I approach it gently, as if walking barefoot through a dream. At this feast, nothing was ordinary. Even the plates were not plates. They were thin sheets of hammered gold, warm from the hands of servants who carried them as though they were holding small suns. The goblets were carved from gemstones so vivid they seemed to glow from within. Deep amethyst, clear mountain crystal, emerald so green it felt alive. The king who hosted this feast believed that appearances were everything. Power was not measured in armies or laws, but in how brightly one could shine in the darkness. So he invited hundreds, nobles, generals, foreign envoys, and placed them in seats arranged like the petals of a giant flower, all facing him, the center. But if you look closely, if you imagine yourself standing among the soft flicker of lamps, you'll notice something subtle. Many guests weren't smiling. Their eyes were careful, measured, like people trying to read a storm long before it hits. Because behind all of this shimmering beauty was a truth nobody dared speak aloud. This feast was not a celebration. It was a warning, a message wrapped in gold leaf. Every dish carried meaning. A roasted stag meant dominance. A swan covered in edible silver meant purity and loyalty. Loyalty demanded, not given. A pyramid of sugared fruits, each berry dusted with a sparkle like frost, was meant to remind everyone that their king could command sweetness, even out of season. But the strangest dish came at the height of the night. Servants entered in perfect silence, carrying an enormous golden platter covered with a silk cloth. When they lifted it, a soft gasp filled the hall. Not of fear, not of delight, something in between. It was a peacock, not roasted plainly, but restored to its full, impossible beauty. Its feathers, real feathers, saved from dozens of peacocks, were arranged to bloom outward in a shining halo. Its beak was tipped with gold. Its eyes, painted with crushed jewels, shimmered like wet glass under candlelight. It didn't even look like food. It looked like a challenge, a symbol, a question. Who here would dare look away from the king who could command a creature to return to beauty even after death? And yet, beneath all this spectacle, beneath the polished marble floors and glittering torches and the scent of spiced wine, there was something the king could not hide. Exhaustion. The quiet desperation of someone trying too hard to be remembered. If you could walk around his throne, if you could stand behind him unseen, you would see his shoulders sag just slightly when no one was looking. You would see him breathe a little too deeply, as if each breath required effort. You would see a man chasing immortality, while fearing that even this feast, this monstrous display of wealth, might not be enough to protect him from the slow, steady erosion of time. And that is the strange thing about these insane royal dinner parties. For all their gold and glitter, for all their roaring music and whispered politics, they were built atop fragile hearts. Hearts that beat just like yours. Hearts that were terrified of being forgotten. Tonight, as you lie here, let that thought be soft. Even the most powerful rulers in history, those who dined under ceilings of gold and commanded oceans of servants, could not escape the simple truth that binds us all. In the quiet moments, everyone fears the dark. Everyone longs for warmth. Everyone wants to be remembered, even if only for a single shining night. As you settle a little deeper into the warmth of your blankets, let your thoughts drift toward the quieter corners of these royal feasts, the places where truth hides more easily than gold. Because no matter how blinding the wealth was, no matter how staggering the cost of a single dinner, every banquet had a shadow, and in that shadow there were stories far softer, far more human, than the shimmering plates and jewel-filled goblets could ever show. Imagine stepping away from the main hall for a moment, slipping into a long corridor lit by lanterns that sway gently, their light trembling like tired fireflies. The music behind you grows fainter, becoming just a pulse, a heartbeat of the night. And there, in that softened silence, you catch glimpses of the people who made these feasts possible. Servants with steady hands and quiet eyes, cooks who worked through the night, stirring pots the size of bathtubs, musicians who practiced until their fingers ached so they wouldn't strike a single wrong note before the king. Their world was different, smaller, tighter, and yet they carried more of the feast than any noble ever would. One servant, barely more than a boy, gently polishes a golden goblet as if it is something alive. Another carries a tray of sugared figs with such careful steps you'd think the ground beneath him is made of thin glass. And somewhere deeper in the palace, far from the glowing lamps, a baker wipes flour from his brow and whispers a quiet prayer that his bread, just bread, will be soft enough to please a ruler who may never taste it, but will certainly judge it. These people lived on the edge of a knife, but they also lived in the seams of the story. And in the soft world of sleep, it becomes easier to imagine what they felt during these insane royal dinner parties. Exhaustion, yes, but also awe, a strange kind of pride, gratitude for surviving another night in a place where everything glittered, even fear. As you wander deeper into this imaginary palace, picture a small balcony overlooking the feast from above. The night air is cool. A breeze carries the mingled scents of roasted meats, sweet wine, and melted candle wax. And from this high vantage point, you can finally see what nobody inside the hall ever could. The entire feast looks fragile, like a glass sculpture, brilliant and breathtaking, but one stray touch, one political slip, one unexpected guest, one moment's hesitation could shatter the entire illusion. That was the truth behind many royal feasts. They weren't really about joy. They weren't really about celebration. They were performances, carefully rehearsed, painfully expensive rituals meant to reassure the world that a kingdom was stronger than it truly was. And at the heart of it all, always, was a ruler who could never let the mask slip. A ruler who smiled as if the world belonged to him, while quietly fearing the night when it would no longer obey. But here, in this calm space between waking and sleep, we can look at these rulers with gentleness, not as tyrants, not as gods, but as humans who tried to fight the passing of time with the only weapons they had. Feasts brighter than dawn, spectacles louder than fear, and gestures so grand they hoped history might mistake them for immortality. And maybe, just maybe, the reason these stories still reach us thousands of years later is because we understand that feeling too. The feeling of wanting a moment to last, the feeling of creating something beautiful, even if it fades, the feeling of hoping that someone, somewhere in the distant future, might remember that we were here. So, as your eyes grow heavier, let this final thought from Chapter 1 float softly through you. Beneath every wild feast, beneath every mountain of gold, beneath every shimmering candle flame, There was always a human heartbeat, uncertain, longing, trembling, just like yours. And in the quiet of the night, that heartbeat is all that truly remains. Tonight, as your eyes grow heavier and the world begins to soften at the edges, we drift into a different hall. One ruled by a man who did not simply claim divine favor, but believed with absolute certainty that he was a god walking among mortals. This was the God Emperor, the ruler whose Roman banquet became legendary not because of its beauty or its brilliance, but because of the trembling fear that lived beneath every polished detail. Imagine a palace whose walls glowed not with torchlight alone, but with the real gold leaf that coated them. It wasn't decoration, it was a declaration, a reminder to every guest that they were stepping into a world owned entirely by one man, a man who expected worship in even the smallest gesture. Tonight, you and I walk softly through that world, not as guests, not as servants, but as quiet observers wrapped in the gentleness of this sleep story. Picture the entrance hall first. Before guests even approached the dining chamber, they crossed a marble floor carved with constellations, each star inlaid with silver. Every step they took echoed lightly, as if the palace itself were listening and waiting. The emperor insisted that each guest pause before entering the banquet and bow, not to him, not to his throne, but to the food they were about to receive. Each course was treated like an offering from the heavens, and refusing to bow, or even bowing too shallow, was interpreted as blasphemy, punishable blasphemy. So imagine the atmosphere. A long line of nobles, soldiers, poets, and wealthy merchants lowering their heads in trembling unison before trays they had not yet seen. Many whispered quiet prayers, not of gratitude, but of fear. Because in this palace, even survival was a performance. And then the dining chamber, a room so enormous that its ceiling vanished into darkness. Columns of black marble rose like night sky pillars, holding up a roof painted to resemble eternal twilight. Gold braziers burned along the walls, filling the air with a warm, spiced glow that made every shadow feel alive. In the center of the room, a single table stretched nearly the length of the hall. It was said that the emperor had chosen its height so that no matter where a guest sat, they would always have to look up at him. Back straight, hands folded, respect unbroken. The emperor's throne, raised on a dais of gilded steps, overlooked everything. He sat draped in shimmering fabrics threaded with real silver, a crown of hammered gold curling around his dark hair. His face was calm, too calm, the kind of stillness worn only by someone convinced the universe itself bowed to him. When the guests took their seats, the first course did not arrive immediately. Instead, musicians played a slow, haunting melody on flutes and lyres, the notes curling through the air like drifting smoke. Time stretched. The guests waited and waited, because the emperor believed anticipation was part of devotion. Only when he lifted one finger, just a small, effortless gesture, did the servants begin the procession. They entered like spirits, their steps silent, their arms steady. And the dishes they carried were impossible. A single plate could cost more than a lifetime of wages for the men and women who worked the fields outside Rome. Some plates were carved entirely from amethyst. Others were blown from glass so thin it shivered like water. And the food, oh, the food! It was not simply rare, it was unnatural. Peacocks, whose feathers had been removed, dyed with crushed herbs, then carefully reattached, so the birds seemed to glow. Fish imported from distant coasts, still shimmering with sea light. Honey cakes shaped like miniature temples. Every plate was placed before each guest with ritual precision. And before they touched a single bite, they bowed again. Look at this moment, this quiet, trembling rhythm of movement. In any other world, it might look beautiful. But here, beneath the golden ceiling of a god-emperor's feast, it was a reminder. One wrong move, one poorly timed gesture, one bite taken too soon, could cost a life. And yet, beneath the tension, beneath the rigid obedience, something else lingered, something strangely human, a fragile hope, a breath of wonder, the sense that even in fear, even under the weight of impossible expectations, beauty still found a way to shimmer at the edges of the night. And that is where we drift, deeper into this story, deeper into the chamber where divinity and danger shared the same table. As we step deeper into this twilight-soaked Roman banquet, imagine the way the air itself seemed to tighten whenever the emperor shifted, even slightly. A single tilt of his head, a slow blink, the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth, each one sent ripples through the hall like soft tremors beneath the sea. Everyone watched him without appearing to watch him, the way people might observe a sleeping lion, quietly, carefully, pretending to admire something else while never truly looking away. The musicians continued their slow, dreamlike melody, the flute sighing through the massive chamber. And then the second course arrived. The doors opened with a long, low groan that echoed through the hall like the breath of something ancient. Servants emerged in perfect formation, each carrying a golden platter large enough to reflect the flickering glow of every torch. Atop those platters were oysters imported from distant coasts, oysters that had been transported alive across scorching deserts and frigid mountain passes so that the emperor could taste the ocean despite living hundreds of miles from the shore. The shells were arranged in spirals like miniature galaxies, shimmering with crushed pearl dust. The emperor believed that such food was proof of his divine reach, that if the sea could come to him, then surely the heavens bowed as well. As the servants placed the oysters before the guests, a hush fell, lower, deeper, heavier than the silence before. The guests bowed again. Many bowed slower this time, not from reverence, but from the weight of fear settling into their bones.
Then came a moment everyone dreaded, waiting for the emperor to take the first bite. The hall was so silent that the crackle of a single torch sounded almost loud. The emperor lifted an oyster with deliberate slowness, as though he were performing a ritual known only to gods. He studied it, he turned it, and then, finally, he tasted it. Only then, only at that exact second, did the guests dare to move. But even as they began to eat, the emperor watched them, not their faces, their hands, their posture, their pace. He believed that one could see loyalty in the way a person chewed, in the tilt of their chin as they swallowed. To him, etiquette wasn't courtesy, it was evidence, and any misstep was insult. Beneath the golden table, feet shifted uncomfortably. Guests swallowed too quickly or too slowly. Some breathed through their noses to stay calm. Some held their breath entirely. And yet, for all the tension, the food itself was exquisite. Warm brine, cool sea salt sweetness, a reminder of the world beyond this hall, beyond the walls coated in gold, beyond the emperor's bays, beyond the requirements to bow before a plate, a reminder that freedom still existed somewhere, just not here. When the platters were taken away, the emperor leaned back slightly in his throne. It was not a gesture of ease, but control, a way to signal that he, alone, decided how the night moved. Then came the next ritual. The emperor clapped once, softly, so softly it might have been imagined, and yet instantly, dozens of dancers slipped into the room. They moved barefoot on the cold marble, their steps soundless, their robes flowing like smoke trailing from extinguished candles. Their performance was graceful, mesmerizing, but it wasn't truly for beauty. It was a test to see who would watch respectfully and who would let their attention drift. In this hall, drifting attention was an unforgivable mistake. Guests held their gazes carefully on the dancers, never too intensely, never too casually. One nobleman, an older senator, allowed his eyes to flick away for a heartbeat, perhaps to check his wine goblet. A tiny gesture, invisible to most, but not to the emperor. The god emperor's gaze snapped to him with the quiet sharpness of a blade being unsheathed, and in that single moment, the entire mood of the hall shifted. The air thickened, the music wavered, even the torches seemed to bend their flames toward the emperor as if bracing for a storm. The senator straightened, bowed his head, murmured something that sounded like surrender. The emperor let the silence stretch, a deliberately slow, suffocating stretch. Yet at least tonight, he chose mercy. The emperor looked away. The storm passed, but the message did not. One wrong gesture, one wandering glance, one breath too bold could end everything. And yet beneath all this danger, something strangely peaceful lingered. A softness nestled inside the tension, because even here, in a hall built on fear and gold, there were tiny pockets of humanity, fragile sparks in the dark, the gentle clink of a spoon against a jeweled dish, the quiet gratitude of a guest allowed to continue breathing, the dancers' flowing robes brushing lightly across the stone like falling petals. And as you breathe slowly now, the night of this banquet folds deeper around you, dangerous, shimmering, eerily beautiful, like a dream you can drift through without ever being touched.
As the night deepened inside the emperor's palace, the banquet slipped into a strange rhythm, one that did not feel entirely human. It was slow, ritualistic, almost dreamlike, as though time itself obeyed the emperor's will. The guests sat in rows of stiff, glittering tension, their breaths small and controlled, their posture fixed like statues carved for a temple. And above them all, the emperor watched with the stillness of a god carved from dark stone. The third course was the one everyone feared. It arrived not with footsteps, but with a sound that felt like the air shifting. A faint breeze passed through the hall, though no doors had opened. For a moment, even the torches bent their flames toward the entrance, as if something invisible had brushed past them. Then the servants appeared, each holding a heavy bronze brazier glowing with red coals. Suspended above the coals was a whole roasted boar, lacquered with honey and wine, its skin gleaming like polished amber. But that wasn't what made the guests tremble. What terrified them was the symbolism. The emperor believed the boar represented chaos, a creature powerful enough to wound a god. Serving it in his presence was a message. He alone had tamed chaos, conquered it, consumed it. And if he could conquer chaos, he could conquer anyone at this table. As the boar was placed before him, the emperor stood, slowly, deliberately. The room froze, as if his rising commanded the night to stop breathing. He lifted a ceremonial blade carved from obsidian, black as a moonless sky. With a single precise motion, he sliced into the boar's flank. The sound, soft, tender, delicate, carried through the room like a whispered omen. The emperor tasted the first piece, closed his eyes, and exhaled as though acknowledging the universe itself. Only when he sat again did the guests dare to breathe. The servants carved the rest of the boar and carried small slices to the guests, each placed on a plate carved from marble, veined with gold. The aroma was intoxicating, rich, sweet, smoky, but hardly anyone tasted it fully. Most swallowed quickly, eager to avoid appearing hesitant. But beneath the tension, something unexpected happened. The flavor brought back memories. One guest thought of his childhood, of simpler meals eaten beside a quiet river. Another thought of her mother's kitchen, the smell of herbs and ash. For a fleeting moment, the banquet seemed almost human. Almost. Then the emperor raised his hand again. The musicians stopped. The dancers vanished like smoke, and the room's temperature seemed to drop as though the marble itself had exhaled cold breath. This was the emperor's favorite part of the night, the test of devotion. One by one, he would ask a guest a question, not about politics,
not about loyalty, but about him. A memory of something he once said, a gesture he once made, a decree he once issued. To fail to remember was to insult a god, and insult meant punishment. The first guest he questioned was a young noblewoman. Her voice shook, but she answered correctly. The emperor nodded. She lived. The second was an older merchant. He answered too quickly, a sign of nervousness. The emperor narrowed his eyes. The room tightened, but he passed. Then came the third, the senator who had looked away during the dance. The emperor smiled, slowly, dangerously, as though savoring the moment. He asked his question, a simple one, almost impossibly simple, and yet the senator's mouth ran dry, his words tangled, his memory blurred. Silence fell like a curtain, a long, aching silence. And then, unexpectedly, the emperor laughed. Not cruelly, not kindly, but softly, as though releasing a burden only he could feel. He waved a hand. The senator could live. And with that gesture, the tension broke like a snapped string. People exhaled, shoulders loosened. A quiet ripple of relief passed through the hall. It was in this moment, this precious, fragile reprieve, that the banquet revealed its final secret. Even a tyrant craves admiration more than fear. Even a god-emperor wants someone to remember him, not out of obligation, but out of awe. And as the night drifted toward its end, as torches dimmed and gold shadows melted into the marble floor, the emperor leaned back in his throne. For the first time all evening, he looked weary, human, mortal. The guests saw it, just for a heartbeat, just for a blink, a king trying to hold on to divinity with hands that were still flesh. And in that moment, the banquet felt softer, like the final notes of a lullaby, a reminder that beneath the gold and cruelty and spectacle, even the most feared emperor was just another soul afraid of fading into the dark. And as you drift now, warm and heavy, let that final truth settle gently within you. In the quiet spaces of history, even gods whisper.
Tonight, as you breathe a little slower, and the world around you begins to soften like candlelight behind silk curtains, we step into a different age entirely. An age where stone castles rose against the cold sky, where tapestries shivered gently in the winter wind, and where firelight danced on long wooden tables polished smooth by generations of hands. This is the setting of a medieval feast that seemed as if it would never end. Imagine a banquet so long, so endless, that guests forgot the day of the week, forgot the stories they arrived with, forgot even the quiet rhythm of their own lives. For in this kingdom, the king desired not simply a celebration, but the biggest feast medieval history had ever known. An event so grand that bards would sing of it long after the torches burned out. Tonight,
You and I walk softly into that dreamlike world, not as guests caught in the chaos, but as gentle observers drifting in the warm glow of a sleep story. Picture the Great Hall first. It was massive, with ceilings so high they vanished into smoky shadows, and beams carved from dark oak stretching overhead like the ribs of a giant. The walls were covered in tapestries depicting forgotten battles and long-lost loves, their colors muted by time, but still carrying a quiet beauty. Torches lined the walls, each flame flickering in its own lazy rhythm, casting amber reflections across the polished stone floor. In the center of it all stretched a single banquet table so long that it disappeared into the distance, swallowed by darkness where the torches could no longer reach. Some said it was the longest dinner table ever built. Others claimed it grew a little longer each night, as though the feast itself were alive, expanding with every story told and every goblet refilled. When the feast began, guests entered with excitement, wrapped in velvet cloaks and wool mantles, eager for warmth, eager for company, eager for a taste of the king's generosity. But they underestimated the king's desire, because this was not a feast meant to end, it was meant to overwhelm. The first night began with music, the gentle hum of harps, the rich notes of lutes, and the soft beat of drums echoing through the chamber like a second heartbeat. Servants moved with careful grace, carrying trenchers of bread still steaming from the oven, wheels of cheese perfumed with herbs, roasted fowl glazed with honey. But even then, the table seemed too long, too heavy, too full. As the feast continued into the second day, candles melted into pools of wax, and the torches burned low. Some of the guests began to lose track of conversations. They weren't drunk, they were simply swallowed by the sheer length of the celebration. The sounds of the hall merged into a single gentle blur, clinking goblets, quiet laughter, and the rustle of long sleeves brushing against carved wooden chairs. Imagine sitting at that table, wrapped in the warmth of fur-lined cloaks, watching the flames shimmer along the table's surface. The food seemed endless. The courses arrived slowly, rhythmically, each one designed to make time feel thicker, softer, as though the night itself were stretching. And the king, oh, the king, he sat at the head of the table like a star around which all time revolved. His crown glowed softly under the torchlight, not sharp or intimidating, but warm, like a hearth fire. He wanted this feast to be remembered, not for extravagance, not for wealth, but for its duration, for the way it swallowed whole days and offered them back as a kind of dream. By the third day, the guests had stopped asking what time it was. The outside world seemed distant, irrelevant, like a memory from another life. Inside the hall, time moved like honey, slow and golden. People laughed more softly, spoke more gently, and let themselves drift into the rhythm of the endless banquet. Some even claimed that they forgot the sound of silence because the hall had become its own world, a world of warmth and flickering light, of soft music and heavy wooden tables stretching into forever. And tonight, as we walk beside this impossible feast, let the endlessness of it all gently wrap around you, like the slow, steady comfort of drifting into sleep.
As the endless medieval feast drifted into what might have been its fourth day, or perhaps the fifth, or even the sixth, time loosened its grip on the hall. Hours no longer felt like hours. They stretched and curved like warm wax sliding down the side of a candle. No one could say for certain when the sun had last risen. The shutters had been drawn shut long ago to hold in the warmth, and the only cycle that mattered now was the soft rhythm of torches burning low, then being replaced by fresh ones that cast the same gentle glow across rows of tired but strangely content faces. The king continued to sit at the head of the table, but even he had begun to soften. The weight of his velvet robe seemed heavier. The golden circlet on his brow had slipped slightly to one side, and yet there was something warm, almost tender, about the way he watched his guests, as if this endless feast was less about spectacle now, and more about holding on to a moment he didn't want to end. The guests themselves had surrendered to the strange magic of the event. Some leaned comfortably against the tall wooden chairs, wrapped in furs that smelled of pine and smoke. Others rested their chins on clasped hands, swaying gently to the soft music that never seemed to stop. Lute players took turns so discreetly that no one ever saw the switch. It was as if the melody itself floated through the air, choosing new hands whenever one set grew tired. Servants, too, had fallen into a dreamlike routine. Their steps were slower now, softer, moving down the endless line of the table like gentle waves lapping against a quiet shore. They carried trays not with urgency, but with an unspoken understanding that time here no longer mattered. The feast would continue, whether a dish arrived now or 10 minutes later. One of the most memorable courses of this never-ending banquet was a stew, rich, fragrant, simmered for so long that its scent alone felt like a warm blanket. It was served from a cauldron so large that it took 4 men to carry it. When the lid was lifted, steam rose in swirling patterns, glowing gold in the torchlight as though touched by something magical. The guests dipped pieces of dark rye bread into the broth, savoring each slow bite, and for a moment the feast felt other than a royal display. Another dish arrived hours later, or perhaps it was the next day. No one really knew. It was a roasted stag, antlers polished to a gentle sheen, the meat tender and cooked in wine-soaked herbs. But even the grandeur of the dish couldn't break the strange sense of calm that had settled over the hall. People no longer exclaimed or applauded when new courses appeared. They simply received each dish with a soft smile, like someone accepting a warm cup of tea on a cold night. The most unusual part of the feast, however, was how the conversations shifted. In the first day, guests spoke loudly, shared gossip, traded stories of battles and marriages and misfortunes. By the second day, the conversations grew slower, as if the hall itself encouraged stillness. And by the third or fourth, words became rare. Guests talked only when something stirred deeply within them. Quiet childhood memories, forgotten hopes, little fragments of their lives that surfaced only when time moved slowly enough for the heart to speak. And the king listened. For all his ambition, all his desire to create the longest dinner in medieval history, he leaned toward his guests like a man grateful for company. It became clear that the feast was no longer about wealth or grandeur. It had become a sanctuary, a pause in time where no battle could reach them, no worry could break the warmth of the hall. Even the animals outside the castle seemed to sense the shift. On the second night, wolves howled in the distance, but by the third, the forest grew quiet, as if nature itself listened to the muffled laughter and music drifting from the great hall. And through it all, the table stretched onward, disappearing into the darkness at its far end. Some swore that if you walked far enough down the table, you would eventually find yourself looping back to where you started, as if the feast had folded time into a circle. But no one was brave enough to test it, not because they feared getting lost, but because staying in their seats felt strangely comforting. As you drift deeper into this sleep story, let this endless feast become a soft dream, warm, steady, timeless, like sitting at a table that asks nothing of you except to breathe and be present. By what might have been the seventh day of the medieval feast, or perhaps only the fourth, for time now felt like a soft, shifting thing, the great hall had transformed into a world of its own. The air was thick with warmth, heavy with the gentle perfume of roasted herbs, melted wax, and smoke curling lazily from the giant hearth. The fire never once went out. It glowed like a steady heartbeat in the corner of the hall, its embers whispering in quiet bursts as logs settled deeper into amber ash. Guests no longer tried to measure the passing hours. Their minds drifted in a slow, floating rhythm, guided only by the rise and fall of music, the soft clatter of plates, and the calming hum of voices blending into a tapestry of sound. Some had removed their cloaks and draped them over the backs of chairs. Others leaned comfortably against the tall wooden table, heads tilted as if listening not to the musicians, but to some deep memory awakening slowly inside them. There was a kind of peace now, deep, heavy, comforting, settling over everything like snowfall. The king himself had changed the most. His posture, once upright and commanding, softened until he sat like a man at the end of a long, cherished evening. His crown rested at a slight angle, and the torchlight glimmered gently along its edges, making it look less like a symbol of power and more like a keepsake from a dream he refused to wake from. On what felt like the final morning, though in truth no one knew what time it really was, the king rose from his seat for the first time in days. The hall fell into a hush, not out of fear or ceremony, but from a tenderness that surprised even the guests themselves. The king walked slowly down the length of the table, trailing his fingers across its polished surface, as though greeting an old friend. His steps were unhurried, steady, each one carrying the weight of a man who understood that something precious was drawing to a close. When he reached the center of the hall, a hush settled so deeply that even the torches quieted, their flames swaying in almost reverent stillness. The king looked at his guests, really looked, as though memorizing their faces in the warm golden light. "A feast," he said softly, his voice like warm wood and tired sighs, "should not only feed the body, it should feed memory." The guests listened, not with their ears, but with their hearts, because by now they all understood what he meant. This feast had become a world suspended in time, a place where laughter was soft enough not to disturb the night, where worries melted like snow against the hearth, and where every moment felt rounded,
gentle, without sharp edges. It was the first time in years that anyone in the hall had felt truly safe, truly unrushed, truly present. Then, in a gesture that no one expected, the king invited the musicians to stop. The hall surrendered to silence, a soft, floating silence so pure it felt like a blanket settling over the room. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. People breathed, slowly, deeply, together. For the first time since the feast began, the great hall felt still. Time, which had expanded and twisted into strange shapes, seemed to fold back into itself, becoming small and delicate again. A single snowflake drifted down from the rafters, perhaps blown loose by a breeze sneaking through the shutters, and melted before it reached the floor. That tiny moment was the signal. The feast, at last, had found its ending. The king smiled, tired but warm, and raised his goblet one final time, not in triumph nor celebration, but in gratitude. "Remember this," he whispered, "the warmth, the company, the time we borrowed from the world." And with that, the feast concluded, not with applause, not with fanfare, but with a soft exhale, like a long-held breath released into the winter air. Guests rose slowly, gathering cloaks and memories alike. They stepped out into the cold morning, blinking against the pale light as if awakening from a dream that had carried them far from the world. The hall remained behind them, glowing faintly in the distance, as though holding on to the last traces of warmth before settling back into silence. And tonight, as you drift deeper into your own quiet, let that endless medieval feast linger in your thoughts. The warmth of the fire, the softness of the music, the gentle, timeless rhythm of a night that refused to end. Let it guide you into sleep the way the torches guided the guests, slowly, warmly, without hurry, until the world feels far away and rest finds you like a soft blanket being drawn gently over your shoulders.
Tonight, as your breath eases and your thoughts begin to settle like dust drifting through a quiet sunbeam, we step gently into a world where luxury took a strangely shimmering form, into courts where gold was not merely decoration, but food. This chapter carries us into the glittering age of rulers who believed the divine must be tasted, not just displayed. Imagine a table so bright that the candle flames struggled to compete, their soft light swallowed by the gleam of plates edged in gold, chalices studded with jewels, and desserts dusted with sheets of metal thin enough to vanish on the tongue. In these royal courts, eating gold was not madness. It was a language, a declaration, a shimmering signal that the ruler sitting at the head of the table belonged to a world beyond ordinary mortals. Tonight, as we walk quietly through this strange slice of food history, let your mind soften the way gold leaf softens on warm fingers. Let the shimmer of it all lull you deeper into rest. Picture the banquet hall first. The walls were lined with polished marble panels that carried faint reflections of torchlight, like tiny stars trapped in stone.
The long table was covered in brocade cloth from faraway lands, embroidered with patterns meant to resemble rays of sunlight. Every dish placed upon it reflected those same warm colors: amber, honey, and pale gold. Servants moved with deliberate grace, mindful of the delicate metal leaf resting atop each dessert. Gold leaf is so thin, so fragile, that the slightest breeze can send it trembling like a tiny sun trying to escape its own light. To place it upon a dish was an art of patience and reverence. The king who began this glittering trend lived in a palace where luxury was not an indulgence, but a ritual. He believed gold carried purity, warmth, and even healing. He believed that consuming it brought him closer to the gods who watched over his reign. Each evening, the royal cooks prepared pastries dusted with gold leaf, meats adorned with flecks of metallic sunlight, and wine poured into chalices so heavy with jewels that servants often carried them with 2 hands. When the king lifted one of those dazzling cups, the hall would fall into a hush. The jewels caught the firelight, scattering it across the faces of his guests like tiny sparks floating through the air. The king would drink slowly, savoring not just the taste, but the spectacle, the way the room seemed to expand with admiration. And then came the desserts: sugared fruits dripping with honey, candied almonds encased in golden shells, and cakes crowned with entire sheets of shining leaf, so delicate that they dissolved the moment they met the warmth of the tongue. In these moments, the hall transformed. The torches dimmed, conversations softened, and everything became a little slower, as if the gold itself weighed down time. Eating became less about hunger and more about participating in a ritual of radiance, a way to remind everyone present that they lived in a world shaped by luxury, beauty, and the fragile brilliance of power. But beneath the surface of this glittering world, something uneasy began to form. The king, so devoted to this golden obsession, began to consume more and more of it. Gold in his desserts, gold dissolved in wine, gold scattered like dust onto his meals. And though gold leaf is harmless in small amounts, the king's devotion was anything but small. Day after day, year after year, he let the shimmer slip past his lips, believing each bite carried immortality, or at least the illusion of it. Tonight, as we step quietly into the beginning of his story, let the soft glow of this strange ritual surround you. Let the candlelight flickering over gold-filled chalices become a gentle image floating behind your eyes. And as your body grows heavier with rest, remember that even the brightest luxuries can cast long, quiet shadows, the kind we will wander through as this chapter continues. For now, let the gold settle gently in your imagination, like sunlight sinking slowly beneath a horizon that never hurries.
As we drift deeper into this golden chapter,
Imagine yourself stepping further into the royal palace, its corridors glowing with torchlight, its marble floors warm beneath your feet despite the cold night outside. The palace felt strangely alive during these golden feasts, as though every surface shimmered with the king's obsession. Servants moved with the cautious grace of people carrying treasure rather than food. Even the kitchens, usually loud with chopping and clattering pans, were quiet now. The cooks whispered as they worked, their hands steady, their breaths slow, as if a single loud noise might tear the fragile gold leaf drifting through the air. Inside that kitchen, sheets of gold sat stacked like pages of a divine book, thin enough to see the shadow of a finger through them, delicate enough to fly away with a whisper of wind. The cooks used brushes made of soft feathers to lift the gold, holding their breath as they laid it gently over warm desserts or pressed it into the rich glaze of roasted meats. By the time a dish reached the great hall, it didn't look like something from a kitchen. It looked like something discovered in a forgotten temple. And the guests, the guests were enchanted. Even those who secretly feared the king's growing obsession could not deny the beauty of the feast. When the plates were set down before them, the torchlight flickered across the gold, making the dishes seem to glow from within. Some guests reached out with trembling hands, not because they feared poison, but because they felt unworthy to disturb something so fragile. The king watched them with quiet satisfaction. Each bite of gold felt to him like a prayer, an offering to the gods hidden in the shimmering metal. But as days turned to months and months to years, the king's obsession deepened. He no longer waited for grand feasts to eat his beloved gold. He demanded it in his morning tea, sprinkled into his afternoon fruit, dissolved into his evening wine. His cooks learned to grind gold leaf into powder so fine it resembled sunlight caught in a fist. Everything he consumed shimmered faintly. And slowly, something began to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly. So quietly that even those closest to him failed to notice at first. His skin grew pale, not with age, but with something more ghost-like. His eyes dulled, the brightness fading like the last glow of a dying torch. He tired easily, though his appetite for gold only grew. Court physicians whispered behind closed doors. They knew gold was harmless in tiny, delicate amounts, but this king was consuming not beauty, but excess. His body, once sturdy and vibrant, now carried the weight of 1,000 glittering meals. And still, he refused to stop. Gold is purity, he insisted when his closest advisor urged him to rest. How can purity harm me? But purity, taken in unreasonable amounts, becomes its own kind of poison. His decline became visible during one of the grandest golden banquets. The hall was gleaming that night. Every plate, every goblet, every candle holder glowing like a sunrise trapped indoors. Musicians played softly, their melodies weaving between the columns like threads of silk. Yet at the head of the table, the king seemed distant, as though his spirit lingered somewhere just beyond the edge of the room. He lifted a golden fruit, pear dipped in honey and wrapped entirely in gold leaf, but his hand trembled. Guests exchanged glances. The shimmer on his robes could not hide the weakness beneath. He took a bite, then another, and as the gold melted on his tongue, his eyelids fluttered with exhaustion rather than pleasure. Still, he smiled. That smile, faint, tired, almost grateful, carried a message no one dared to speak. That luxury, even when divine, can swallow the one who worships it most. Tonight, as we linger here in the soft glow of that fading smile, let the shimmer of his feast drift around you like dust of sunlight. Let the quiet warnings hidden in this golden tale settle gently in your thoughts. And let the story guide you into softness, into stillness, into the deep exhale that welcomes sleep.
As the king's golden obsession deepened, the palace itself seemed to dim around him, not in darkness, but in a slow fading, like sunlight losing its strength as evening arrives. Servants whispered that the palace did not gleam the same way it once had. The marble walls looked softer, the torches flickered lower, and even the jeweled chalices reflected less light than before. It was as though the gold the king consumed had stolen brightness from the world to feed his illusion of immortality. On a night that many believed marked the turning point, though no one could name the exact day, the king ordered a feast more extravagant than any before. The hall was prepared with almost sacred care. Golden draperies hung from the high beams, shimmering like frozen sunlight. Candles were placed in such abundance that from a distance the hall looked as though it had caught fire. And at the center, on a pedestal carved from pale stone, was the banquet's masterpiece, a towering dessert crafted entirely of sugar, honey, and gold. The structure resembled a small palace, tiny spires dusted in gold leaf, doors edged in metallic shine, windows made from sheets of clear sugar. It was breathtaking, delicate, and ominous. When the king entered, the hall fell silent. His steps, once confident and heavy with authority, were now soft and unsteady, though he hid the tremor beneath richly embroidered robes. His eyes, dulled from years of consuming gold, still searched the room with longing, not for admiration, but for reassurance, as if he needed someone, anyone, to believe with him that he had not gone too far. The musicians played a slow, wandering melody, one that curled through the hall like a ribbon of smoke. The guests spoke little, they ate little. Their attention hung on the king as though waiting for something they could not name. When the golden dessert was finally lowered from its pedestal and placed before him, the king paused, just for a breath, a moment. The hall held that breath with him, suspended in a quiet so deep it rang like distant bells. Then he reached out,
hands trembling, and broke off a tiny golden spire. It glittered between his fingers. He lifted it to his lips and ate it. The sweetness lingered only for a moment before his expression softened into something fragile, something almost childlike. But the moment did not last. A wave of exhaustion washed over him so visibly that even the guests nearest him flinched. His shoulders sagged, his face paled further, yet he forced a smile, as if determined to keep up the illusion that gold strengthened rather than weakened him. The feast continued in uneasy silence. Guests murmured, servants exchanged worried glances, and the king reclined slightly in his seat, breathing as though each inhale was heavier than the last. At some point during the night, a hush spread across the hall. No musician announced it, no servant signaled it. It simply appeared, the way mist appears over a still lake at dawn. A physician approached quietly, bowing deeply before whispering something only the king could hear. And for the first time, the king did not wave him away. He closed his eyes. For a long, aching moment, the hall seemed to collapse into stillness. Gold, music, warmth, everything frozen like a painting held between heartbeats. When the king opened his eyes again, they were soft, clearer than before, as if the shimmer that had clouded them was finally letting go. He raised a hand, not to lift another golden bite, but to silence the hall. He whispered, "Luxury is not immortality. It is only light that fades." The words drifted across the room like fragile gold dust. Some guests bowed their heads, others closed their eyes, letting the weight of the moment settle into memory. A final course was served, but the king did not touch it. Instead, he rested his hand on the table, palm open, as though surrendering to something far gentler than fear, acceptance. Outside, the night deepened. Snow fell softly against the shuttered windows, each flake catching the faint glow of candlelight before melting into darkness. And inside, the golden feast reached its quiet end, not with grief, not with panic, but with a soft, weary peace. A reminder that even the brightest luxuries eventually dim, and that sometimes the most human thing a king can do is finally stop shining. Tonight, let that gentle truth wrap around you like a warm blanket. Let the fading gold settle softly in your mind. And as the shimmer dissolves into darkness, let sleep come to you the way silence came to that hall, slowly, tenderly, without resistance.
Tonight, as your breath softens and your thoughts float like candle smoke rising toward a quiet ceiling, we step into one of the strangest corners of royal dining. A world where food was not simply cooked or carved, but staged. Here, every dish was a performance, designed to thrill, surprise, or gently unsettle the noble guests gathered beneath flickering torchlight. This chapter carries us into the realm of the weirdest dishes ever served to a king. Pies that sang, birds that appeared to return from the dead, and feasts where the boundary between spectacle and supper blurred like ink on wet parchment. Imagine entering a medieval banquet hall where the air is thick with the smell of roasted herbs and warm bread. But beneath those familiar aromas is something else, something theatrical. Servants carry dishes draped in cloth, their steps slow and deliberate, not because the food is delicate, but because what lies beneath those cloths is alive. The king sits at the head of the table, a crown gleaming in soft firelight, waiting not for nourishment, but for wonder. His guests watch him for cues, some leaning forward eagerly, others gripping their goblets with a mixture of fascination and nerves. The first of these bizarre dishes arrives with a quiet fanfare, a pie so large it requires 2 men to carry it. Its crust is golden, lacquered with egg yolk, and decorated with carved flourishes resembling feathers. But the true surprise rests inside. When the king lifts his hand, signaling the moment, a servant draws a silver knife through the crust. And as the top is gently lifted, a soft fluttering bursts forth. Birds, living, tiny, startled, fly upward from the pie, wings beating against the warm torchlight. Their chirps echo through the vaulted hall as they circle the rafters. Guests gasp, some covering their mouths, others laughing softly as feathers drift down like delicate snowflakes. This singing pie, as chroniclers later called it, was not meant to be eaten. It was meant to charm, to enchant, to turn a simple meal into a story that would travel across centuries. And it did. After the birds scatter, the hall returns to its gentle murmur. The king smiles, pleased with the first success of the evening. What comes next is quieter, more elegant, yet no less strange. A peacock. Not roasted, not carved, but restored. Its feathers, iridescent greens and blues, have been carefully reattached after roasting, arranged so meticulously that the bird seems almost alive, its eyes gleaming like polished beads. It is carried on a silver platter so large it reflects the torchlight in trembling waves of gold. The peacock is not served immediately. It is displayed, admired, its shimmering plumage catching the breath of everyone who sees it. In some courts, the bird would even be placed before the king as a symbol, a reminder of majesty, immortality, and the fragile beauty of power. When the peacock dish is finally carved, its meat is tender and faintly sweet, scented with spices brought from worlds so distant that the journey required months of sea and wind. Guests eat slowly, almost reverently, as though disturbing the dish too quickly might break the spell it carries. And then comes the rarest delicacy of the night. A small bird, no bigger than a closed hand, brought from the edges of the known world. Its feathers shimmered with a reddish gold when alive, though now they rest in a separate decorative bowl beside the platter. This bird, worth more than a modest house, was served only to the king. It was said to taste like a blend of wildflowers and autumn wind, a small bite of a landscape no one else at the table had seen. But the truth is, no one really cared how it tasted. What mattered was the aura around it, the hush that fell as it was presented, the way the king paused before lifting his knife, the quiet heartbeat of anticipation shared by every guest in the hall. These strange dishes were not simply food, they were the theater of power, the whisper of kingdoms, the soft glow of stories meant to leave an impression long after the night faded. And as we drift gently into this chapter, let the flutter of tiny wings, the shimmer of peacock feathers, and the distant taste of rare birds become soft images floating at the edges of your mind, guiding you deeper into stillness,
deeper into the quiet, where sleep begins.
As the strange little bird disappears from the king's plate, the hall exhales again, a long, soft breath shared by nobles who have witnessed something rare, even by royal standards. But the night is far from finished, and the strangeness of the feast is only beginning to unfold. A new dish is carried forward, slow and careful, as though the servants are afraid the air around it might break. A faint scent drifts through the hall, herbs, honey, and something wild, something from the deep woods. And then guests begin to whisper, because they recognize the shape beneath the cloth. It is a boar's head. But not an ordinary boar's head. This one is polished until the skin glows like bronze, its tusks wrapped in thin sheets of silver, and its eyes replaced with dark polished stones that reflect the torches like restless embers. A small apple sits in its mouth, more symbolic than culinary, a reminder of old feasting traditions. But what makes this dish unsettling is not its appearance, it is the faint sound coming from within, a vibration, a hum, as if something inside the boar's head is moving. When the king gives permission, the servant slides a blade along the seam near the jawline. The head opens like a chest, revealing not meat, but an arrangement of tiny pastries shaped like woodland animals, hares, deer, birds, and foxes, all baked in delicate crusts so thin they seem like warm parchment. Some are filled with spiced fruit, others with almond cream, and a few with fragrant meat from the hunt. The humming sound is simply steam trapped under the lid, escaping in a sigh the moment the head is opened. The hall fills with a gentle sweetness. Guests smile, relieved, amused, charmed all at once. The boar, it seems, was not meant to shock, but to make them laugh softly, to break the tension in a room where every dish feels like a test of nerves. When the pastries are served, the king leans back, content, his curiosity satisfied for the moment. But across the hall, servants are already preparing the next marvel of the evening. This one does not walk or hum or flutter. It simply glows. A large, shallow bowl is carried out, filled with a pale broth shimmering with light. At first, guests think the torch flames are reflecting off the surface, but no, the light moves, pulses, shifts. It is coming from within the dish itself. Medieval cooks, ingenious, eccentric, and sometimes a little reckless, discovered a way to create luminous soups using crushed fish scales, oil, and minerals that caught and refracted light. The mixture was harmless in small amounts and created the illusion of a dish that glowed like moonlit water. The king peers into the bowl, amused and hypnotized, watching the surface ripple gently as if stirred by an unseen hand. When a ladle dips into the broth, the liquid traces ribbons of light against the metal, soft, wavering, almost celestial. Guests murmur in awe, some leaning so close their reflections shimmer in the shifting glow. Drinking the soup feels like sipping warm starlight, and though its taste is simple, mostly herbs and mild spices, the experience is unforgettable. But the strangest dish is yet to come, because this feast, like many in royal courts, is not just about food. It is about illusion, about bending reality just enough to leave guests unsure whether they witnessed magic or trickery. In the corner of the hall, a group of cooks prepares a platter that requires absolute precision. They arrange pieces of meat, fruit, and pastry in such a way that when seen from one angle, the dish looks like a simple roast, but from another angle, it becomes something entirely different.
the face of a mythical creature. This optical illusion, known in later manuscripts as the shifting platter, was said to cause gasps, laughter, and sometimes frightened whispers from guests who were convinced the creature might blink or move. When the platter reaches the king, he tilts his head and smiles widely. For a moment, the mythical beast seems to materialize from smoke and shadow, its features carved from roast vegetables, its horns shaped from baked dough. Nothing about it is alive, yet the artistry gives it breath. The guests applaud softly, their hands tapping like a gentle rain, and as the king nods in satisfaction, the strange dishes of the night blend together in the hall's warm glow. Birds that flew, desserts that hid inside boars, soup that shimmered like moonlight, and illusions that drifted between the real and the imagined. Let these images settle softly in your mind, like feathers on still water, as the feast continues deeper into the quiet heart of history.
The feast has stretched long into the night now, and with every new dish, the boundary between the possible and the impossible seems to blur a little more. Guests shift in their seats, not from discomfort, but from the strange delight of witnessing a performance disguised as dinner. Even the torches appeared to burn differently, softer, slower, as though the hall itself is settling into a gentle dream. Servants move quietly, gliding rather than walking, carrying the next spectacle of the evening. This time, it is covered not with cloth, but with a dome of glass so clear it reflects the entire hall like a frozen bubble. Inside, resting on a platter covered in herbs and steam, is something that immediately silences the room. A creature that looks both familiar and impossibly altered. A goose. But no ordinary goose. Its feathers have been dyed with crushed flowers to create a soft violet hue, and around its body are tied tiny ribbons made from sugar paste, delicate as frost. The bird seems to float on a bed of swirling steam, which rises slowly, creating the illusion that it is still alive, gently breathing in sleep. When the glass dome is lifted, the steam unfurls into the air like a sigh, and the scent changes the entire atmosphere of the hall. Lavender, rosemary, warm spice. Guests close their eyes briefly, letting the aroma drift over them like a blanket. The king watches with the quiet satisfaction of someone who knows he has orchestrated wonder. The goose is carved, but not loudly. No harsh cracking of bones, no sharp thud of blade on wood. Instead, the knife slides through with softness, releasing tender slices that glisten faintly with herbal oil. The ribbons melt instantly on warm plates, becoming sweet accents that mix with the savoring meat. Guests eat slowly, savoring not just taste, but the quiet ritual of it all. But the night is not done offering its strange gifts. Another dish appears next, small enough to fit in 2 hands, and yet it captures every eye in the hall because it moves, or seems to. It is a bowl filled with what looks like tiny pearls, shimmering pale blue, each bead quivering slightly as if alive. These are dancing grains, a medieval culinary curiosity created from seeds soaked in a mixture that made them vibrate softly when warmed. The effect is hypnotic, a surface that ripples like water touched by rain. Guests lean forward,
their expressions softening with childlike awe. No one speaks, no one dares break the fragile spell. The king gestures for them to taste, and as spoons dip into the bowl, the pearls stop moving, melting into a creamy texture with a hint of honey and mint. It feels almost like eating the memory of a breeze. As the feast continues, the dishes become gentler, quieter, as though easing the hall toward the slow descent into sleep. A bowl of warm milk infused with golden threads of saffron is passed around. Its glow soft and steady like candlelight. A tray of sugared petals, rose, violet, mint, offers a final whisper of sweetness to the night. And then, when the last plate has been cleared, the room grows still. A stillness deep enough that even the torches seem to lower their flames in respect. The king arises, not with grandeur, but with a calm sense of closure. He has offered his guests not a meal, but a dream, a journey through dishes that fluttered, shimmered, glowed, and breathed, a reminder that in the corridors of royal power, even food could become a language of wonder. As the guests leave the hall, their footsteps echo softly, like fading raindrops. Outside, the night air is cool and gentle, the moon resting low on the horizon. For those who witness the feast, sleep will come easily, the kind of sleep touched by strange beauty, by soft illusions, by the quiet marvels that settle in the corners of the mind. And as you drift with them, let your thoughts move like the gentle steam rising from those strange dishes. Let your breath follow the calm of the glowing soup, the fluttering of tiny wings, the slow dancing of shimmering grains. Let the strangeness of ancient kings soothe you, guide you, soften the edges of your day, until everything is quiet, warm, and ready to fall into deep rest.
Tonight, as the torches dim and your breathing settles into a slow, comfortable rhythm, we step into a kind of royal feast that had nothing to do with joy, spectacle, or the strange wonders of dishes that glowed or fluttered or sang. This chapter carries us into a far quieter, far more dangerous world, one where a royal banquet was not a celebration, but a battlefield made of polished wood, golden goblets, and silence. A place where a single seat could shape a future, or quietly erase one. Imagine entering a grand hall, but instead of excitement or anticipation, the air feels heavy, not with smoke or perfume, but with calculation. Every nobleman and envoy who walks through the doors understands that tonight is not about eating. Tonight is about surviving. The tables are long and symmetrical, arranged with the precision of a commander's map. Plates shimmer faintly in the torchlight, but no one looks at the food. Instead, all eyes flickered toward the center of the room, the king's seat, the place from which every other seat gains or loses value. A servant guides you forward, and even though the room is warm, the back of your neck feels cool with unease. You know every step you take is being measured. You know every chair around you might determine how the king reads your loyalty. And you know that being placed
too far from the center is an insult, but being placed too close can be just as dangerous, because proximity means power, and power makes enemies. As you settle into your seat, the hall seems to shift. It is subtle, like the moment a forest grows quiet because a predator has stepped into the clearing. Voices lower, shoulders stiffen. People begin to measure each other with silent glances. The first course arrives, carried in perfect choreography by servants who understand that any distraction could send ripples of rumor through the hall. A slice of bread, a small bowl of broth. Nothing extravagant, nothing designed to impress. But in this room, extravagance isn't needed. What matters is whether you raise your cup before the king does, whether you speak before the man to your left finishes, whether you look too long at the ambassador across the table. Because even a lingering glance can be interpreted as alliance, defiance, or something far worse. You focus on breathing, but even that feels monitored, as if the entire hall listens. The king finally lifts his cup. The room freezes. Then, as if a great wind has passed through, every noble raises their cup in perfect unison. You follow a heartbeat later, careful not to be too early, too eager, too timid. This is the dance of diplomacy, a dance where every gesture must be soft, calculated, and quiet enough not to disturb the surface of the night. But beneath that surface, currents churn. On the far end of the hall, an envoy from a rival kingdom stares at his plate, not eating. His seat is slightly lower than the king's advisors, a subtle humiliation that everyone notices. Servants avoid meeting his eyes. Nobles whisper behind their goblets. Even the musicians in the corner slow their playing, as though they can sense tension gathering like storm clouds above the banquet. Across from him sits a general, his armor polished but his expression dimmed. He has been placed a full 3 seats away from where he sat the previous month. In a world where everything is political, this distance is louder than any accusation. He knows it. Everyone knows it. And yet, no one speaks. Silence is the sharpest weapon here. It slices cleaner than any blade. You watch the king, trying to read his posture, his eyes, the tilt of his chin. Is he testing loyalty, punishing disobedience, or simply rearranging the court like pieces on a quiet chessboard? No one can tell, and that uncertainty is what keeps everyone still, tense, obedient. When the second course arrives, you barely notice what it is. Your mind is occupied by the unspoken rules swirling around the table, tightening like vines around a stone wall. And yet, in this tension, there is a strange calm, the kind that settles when danger becomes predictable, like waves hitting a shore you've grown used to. Let yourself drift through that calm now. Let the quiet of this difficult banquet wrap around you, not with fear, but with softness. Because this is boring history for sleep, told slowly, gently, until your eyelids grow heavy with the weight of centuries.
The second course has barely touched the table when the atmosphere shifts again, not with noise, but with something subtler, like a breeze that slips in through a crack in the stone. It is a change in posture, in glances, in the way hands hover above goblets before committing to a sip. At a diplomatic royal dinner, even silence has layers, and each one reveals a truth the flute itself cannot hide. You begin to notice the map of alliances drawn invisibly across the table. Two noblemen who normally speak freely keep their eyes fixed on their plates, refusing to look at one another. An advisor, usually confident, toys with his spoon as though it weighs more than his own armor. A visiting diplomat, dressed in embroidered silk, smiles too widely, his expression a shield, polished thin to hide the worry beneath. None of this is said aloud. All of it is felt. A servant places a tray in front of the king, a simple dish of roasted roots and herbs, the kind of food peasants might eat on an ordinary evening. And that simplicity speaks volumes. The king is not here to impress. He is here to control, to remind everyone present that luxury is not the true source of power. Fear is. And even fear, when wrapped in quietness, settles more deeply. The king takes a bite. The room waits. Only when he swallows do others lift their forks. For a moment, the rhythm returns. Lift, chew, swallow, breathe. But that moment quickly fractures. Across the table, a noblewoman, known for her sharp wit and sharper alliances, lowers her cup a fraction too early after a toast. It is a small mistake, barely noticeable, but in a room where survival depends on precision, it is as loud as a cracked tile. Eyes dart toward her, then toward the king. His face does not change, his posture remains relaxed, but his gaze lingers half a second longer than comfort allows. And half a second is all it takes for rumor to bloom. A messenger near the wall stiffens. A scribe in the corner quietly dips his quill in ink, ready to record the implications of her mistake, should it become important in the days to come. You watch her fingers tremble slightly as she sets her cup down. It is strange, you think, how a simple dinner can feel more perilous than a battlefield. At least on the battlefield, the threats are visible. Here, danger wears silk and gold and the softest smiles. The next dish arrives. Small bowls of broth infused with amber-colored spice, warm enough to soothe the throat, but thin enough not to distract. Even the dishes themselves have a purpose, to keep everyone awake, aware, unable to sink fully into comfort. The king speaks at last. One simple question. A question directed not at the noblewoman who erred, not at the generals, not at the diplomats, but at a minor official seated near the end of the table. "How fares your province this winter?" His tone is calm, almost gentle, but the hall recognizes the strategy instantly. By addressing someone of low rank, the king reminds everyone who controls the hierarchy and who can elevate or destroy with a single sentence. The official bows his head, stammering through his response. He chooses his words carefully, each syllable placed like a stepping stone across ice. When he finishes, the king simply nods. It is a nod that could mean approval or nothing at all. And nothing, in its own way, can be more terrifying. As conversation resumes in tiny, cautious ripples, you realize that this dinner reveals more about its participants than any speech or decree. The way someone holds their cup,
the angle of a chair, the direction of a glance. All of it is political language spoken in perfect silence. And yet, within all this tension, a gentle rhythm returns, not peaceful, but familiar. The familiarity of a world that has always existed in shadows, where power hums beneath every breath. Let that rhythm lull you now. Let the subtle movements of this quiet battlefield fade into a soft, drowsy haze. Let the flicker of torchlight in your imagination grow dimmer. Because in the world of boring history for sleep, even political danger becomes a gentle path leading you deeper into rest.
By the time the third course is brought forward, the hall feels less like a place for food and more like a chamber where fate itself sits at the table, quietly judging each person present. The tension hasn't vanished. It has simply softened, like embers settling under ash, glowing but no longer burning. And in that softened space, you begin to notice things that were invisible at first. Small things, gentle things. The way a servant moves slower now, mindful of the room's delicate balance. The way the musician's soft notes drift like mist, barely touching the air. The way nobles breathe, almost in unison, as though the entire court has unconsciously agreed not to disturb whatever fragile piece hangs above the table. The third course is simple yet elegant. Slices of tender fish laid over warm grains, with a thin drizzle of herb oil that releases a soothing aroma. It is the kind of dish meant not to impress, but to calm. A dish chosen purposefully to ease the sharp edges of the night. The king takes his time with it, and because he moves gently, the hall follows. Forks rise quietly. Cups lift without trembling. Even the diplomats who arrived with stiff shoulders now seem to melt ever so slightly into their chairs. Something like peace, false peace, political peace, begins to descend. But make no mistake, the battlefield still exists. It merely sleeps. You watch as two advisors, seated across from each other, exchange the smallest nod. It could be nothing. It could be everything. Their rivalry is known, but tonight, their truce is wordless. A truce carved not from trust, but from necessity. At a feast where a wrong glance can end a career, sometimes even enemies hold their breaths together. As the next dish arrives, small pastries filled with warm cheese and herbs, the hall grows softer still. Steam rises from the trays, drifting upward in gentle spirals, blurring the edges of the musicians, the torches, even the king himself. The world becomes hazy, as though time has slowed its heartbeat. You feel yourself sinking into that haze. This is the gift hidden inside these silent political feasts. Beneath the danger lies a rhythm that moves slowly, steadily, like the tide against a quiet shore. You watch nobles lean back ever so slightly, shoulders losing their stiffness. You listen to the faint scrape of cutlery softened by distance. You feel the tension letting go, one thread at a time. And then, the king stands. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but with the gentle certainty of someone who knows the rune will follow whatever he commands. The entire hall rises with him, a soft wave of fabric and breath. No words are spoken, none are needed. The dinner is over. The silent battle ends not with victory or defeat, but with an exhale shared by everyone present. A release of pressure so subtle, You feel it without seeing it. As the nobles file out, whispering carefully rehearsed farewells, the hall transforms. The torches dim, the long table empties, even the shadows stretch, finally allowed to rest. And in this emptying, there is comfort, a reminder that even the sharpest political nights give way to quiet, to calm, to the slow unraveling of worry. Let that unraveling reach you now. Let the last echoes of this silent political battlefield drift into the background of your mind. Let the memory of raised cups, measured breaths, and cautious glances soften into something warm, something distant, something sleep-shaped. Because here, in this soft retelling of political history, the danger fades, the room quiets, the night settles, and you, like the nobles leaving that hall, can finally begin to exhale. Breathe softly. Let the dim torchlight of your imagination fade. Let the feast end gently in your thoughts. And let yourself drift, slowly, into the deep, steady waters of rest. Tonight, as your breath softens and your thoughts begin to stretch like long shadows at dusk, we enter one of the most unbelievable spectacles of medieval excess, a royal feast that did not last a night or a weekend or even a week, but an entire month. 30 days of eating, drinking, music, laughter, exhaustion, and quiet fear. A celebration so extravagant, so relentless, that it blurred the line between joy and endurance. This is the story of the 30-day feast, a banquet that swallowed time itself. Imagine approaching the castle where this endless celebration is about to begin. The sky is pale gold, the kind of light that signals early afternoon, yet already music spills from the open windows. Soft flutes, the thump of drums, the gentle strum of lutes blending into one warm cloud of sound. As you step into the great hall, the heat of bodies, torches, and simmering dishes wraps around you like a wool cloak. Long tables stretch farther than the eye can follow, covered in cloth dyed rich crimson. The air smells of roasted meat, baked fruit, warm bread, and wine aged in deep, cool cellars. Servants weave between the crowds, carrying trays far too heavy for one person, yet somehow balanced perfectly. The king sits at the head of the hall, wearing a crown that seems almost too bright, too polished, as though it was prepared specifically for the weight of the coming celebration. The celebration is meant to honor a victory, though as the days unfold, no one will quite remember which one. At first, the feast begins as any feast might. A toast, a wave of cheers, music rising like a tide. Dishes appear in overwhelming abundance. Roasted boars, pies with intricate crusts, spiced fish, candied figs, warm ale, sweet wines. The laughter is full and loud, bouncing off vaulted ceilings. People clap in rhythm with the musicians, and even the stone pillars seem to hum with life.
But slowly, as the sun sets and rises again and again and again, the tone changes. On day 3, the hall is still cheerful, though the conversations grow slower, voices raspier. On day 5, the musicians begin repeating melodies because even they cannot recall which ones were already played. On day 7, guests start leaning heavily on the tables, hands trembling as they lift goblets that suddenly feel too heavy. And still, the king remains, alert, unmoving, hosting with complete authority. Because here is the unspoken truth: no one may leave until he rises. No one may rest until he tires. And kings, especially kings who love grand displays of power, do not tire easily. The hall becomes a world without clocks. Only the candles measure time, burning down in quiet surrender, replaced again and again by servants who move silently through the haze. As you watch all of this from the edge of the hall, you begin to sense a strange blending of celebration and dread. Guests force smiles. Laughter cracks around the edges. People cling to their goblets like anchors because lifting them keeps them awake. On the 10th day, some guests begin nodding off at the table before jerking awake, terrified of being caught sleeping in a room where the king does not sleep. On the 12th, a nobleman collapses gently against the shoulder of the person beside him, like a curtain falling. Servants carry him out quietly, and the king says nothing. The feast continues. By the 15th day, the line between meal and dream has blurred. The hall feels suspended in time, drifting like a ship on fog-covered waters. Music becomes a soft buzz. The torches flicker in slow motion. People chew food without tasting it. They drink wine without feeling warmth. The celebration is still magnificent, but magnificence can be exhausting when stretched beyond human limits. And yet, in this exhaustion, something strangely calming emerges. Movements slow, voices drop. The entire hall begins to sway to the faint rhythm of survival. Guests lean into the soft inevitability of the feast. They stop resisting time and let it wash over them like a tide that has forgotten where the shore is. As you breathe with them, as you stand among these timeless tables, you feel the first hint of the feast's hypnotic lull, the kind that pulls you gently toward rest. This is the edge where the 30-day feast stops being a historical event and becomes a dream you can drift into.
As the days stretch on, the 30-day feast begins to slip into a rhythm that feels almost tidal, slow, repetitive, hypnotic. The hall is no longer a place of celebration, but a world suspended in its own strange gravity. Morning no longer feels like morning. Night no longer feels like night. Time folds and refolds itself like soft fabric, and the guests drift through it, carried along as if by an unseen current. On the 20th day, the air in the hall grows thick, not unpleasant, just dense, warm,
humming, not with noise, but with presence. The torches flicker slower. The music drifts like the echo of a memory. Servants move with an almost dreamlike gentleness, as though walking through water, their steps careful not to disturb the fragile balance of the room. By now, guests have accepted their fate. Not prisoners, not exactly, but not free either. They sit, they eat small bites, they drink more water than wine. Their bodies have learned to conserve energy, to settle into the soft numbness that keeps them upright. Some lean their elbows on the table, others close their eyes for seconds at a time, drifting into brief, fragile pockets of rest. And still, the king remains, the fixed point around which this entire month-long world orbits. His presence is both anchor and chain. He drinks slowly, eats slower, his movements deliberate, subtle signals that dictate the pace of the entire hall. When he pauses, the room stills. When he lifts his cup, every hand follows. When he turns his head to listen to the musicians, the hall tilts with him, as though listening through his ears. On the 22nd day, something shifts. A guest, an elderly baron, his beard silvered and his posture stooped, begins humming softly under his breath. Not a melody anyone recognizes, just a low, wavering sound that seems to come from some distant place inside him. The humming spreads not as music, but as atmosphere. It drifts through the hall like a tired breeze, brushing the edges of torchlight and disappearing into the rafters. The Baron doesn't realize he's doing it. None of the guests do. Fatigue has turned them into instruments of instinct. Their minds drift, their bodies remain. On the 24th day, a light rain begins outside. Soft, steady, rhythmic. The sound reaches the hall through narrow windows, blending with the music and the quiet clinking of cups. The rain becomes the soundtrack of the feast, a gentle reminder of a world beyond the castle walls, a world with fields, roads, forests, a world where life moves normally, unlike inside this suspended dream. Some guests look toward the windows, longing flickering behind their eyes. But the longing is soft, dulled by exhaustion. No one would dare leave. Even if the king granted permission, many are too weary to attempt the journey home. On the 25th day, the musicians play so slowly that the music feels like a lullaby stretched across hours. Strings vibrate with a soft hum, almost like sighs. Drums beat at a pace that feels like a heartbeat drifting into sleep. Even the king's eyes begin to droop, not tired, but relaxed in a way that no one has seen since the feast began. There are moments now when the hall feels like a cocoon, warm, dim, heavy with shared breaths. And in that cocoon, something close to serenity forms. Not joy, not comfort, but a kind of surrender, a letting go, a drifting. On the 27th day, a guest quietly falls asleep sitting upright. His hands still rest on the table, fingers curve gently around his goblet. His breathing is soft, steady. At first, a few people panic, thinking he has collapsed, but then they see the peaceful rise and fall of his chest, and their faces soften. A servant places a cloak around his shoulders and lets him rest. The king notices and says nothing. Perhaps even he, after so many days, understands the weight of the feast. Or perhaps he simply lacks the energy to enforce the old rules. By the 28th day, the feast no longer resembles a celebration at all. It is a quiet endurance ritual, a shared dream that no one can wake from. Guests no longer speak. They communicate with small gestures, a nod, a lifted brow, a faint smile. They move as one slow organism, bound together by the same exhaustion, the same surrender. And in that shared stillness, something strangely soothing emerges, a rhythm that wraps itself around the hall like a warm blanket, a rhythm that slows the heart, a rhythm not of celebration, but of surrender. If you listen closely, you can feel it too, in the way your breath settles, in the heaviness behind your eyes, in the soft quiet forming in your mind. You are drifting with them now, through the long days of this impossible feast, carried toward the deeper softness of sleep.
By the 29th day, the feast becomes something closer to a waking dream than a royal event. The hall feels suspended in a soft haze, as if the stone walls themselves have absorbed the exhaustion and begun breathing it back into the air. Every movement is slow, deliberate, not out of ritual now, but out of necessity. Even lifting a cup begins to feel like lifting a small memory, something fragile that must be handled with care. The guests no longer count the days. They no longer wonder when the feast will end. They have slipped past anticipation into a gentler state of acceptance, the way a traveler eventually stops asking how far the road continues and simply follows the path because there is no other place left to go. The king, too, seems changed, not weaker, but softer at the edges. His authority has faded into something quiet, almost contemplative. He watches his guests with the calm gaze of someone observing the tide. He speaks little. He commands even less. And though no one would dare say it aloud, there are moments when the room feels almost leaderless, guided only by the slow pulse of shared fatigue. On the evening of the 29th night, a strange peace settles over the hall. The candles burn lower, their flames swaying as though drowsy. The musicians play without urgency, strings sighing across the room in long, drifting strokes. A guest at the far end of the table reaches for a piece of bread and pauses midway, not because of hesitation, but because for a moment he forgets what he was reaching for. His hand rests in the air, suspended, then gently lowers. No one laughs. No one whispers. The room simply breathes around him, patient and unhurried. Outside the castle, the world continues. Rain puddles along the cobblestones. The night wind moves through the trees. But inside the hall has become its own season. A season without hours or changes. A season made entirely of torchlight, low voices, and the soft weight of endurance. On the 30th morning, the sun rises quietly over the kingdom, brushing the towers with pale gold. But inside the hall, the light reaches the table slowly, as if it too is tired. Guests blink against it, their eyes adjusting like people waking from a long, drifting dream. The king arrives later than usual. Not dramatically late, just a few breaths slower, as though he has finally begun to feel the same heaviness the others have carried for nearly a month. When he sits, the hall becomes still, but not tense, simply aware, present. A collective breath holding itself steady. Then, without ceremony, he lifts his cup, not high, not proudly, just gently. And in that small motion, the room understands. The feast is ending. A wave moves silently around the table,
Not excitement, not relief, but something more delicate. Release. The kind that washes over a person when the burden they've carried for too long is finally allowed to slip from their shoulders. The king speaks only 4 words. Words soft enough that the musicians nearly miss them. You may go now. The silence that follows is not stunned. It is grateful, heavy, sacred. Guests rise slowly, chairs scraping softly across the floor. Some steady themselves with a hand on the table. Some breathe deeply as though re-entering their own bodies after weeks of drifting outside them. A few glance back at their seats, the places where they've lived their strange suspended month, and their eyes softened with disbelief that it is truly over. Outside, the air feels cooler, cleaner, the sky wider than they remembered. And as they step into the daylight, many realize they have forgotten what it feels like to stand without permission, to choose their own path, to move in a world not shaped by a single man's presence. And yet, for all its madness, for all its strain and surreal exhaustion, there is something oddly soothing about the memory of the feast. A strange drifting rhythm they will carry with them for years. A reminder of that month when time dissolved into candlelight, music slowed into dreams, and even the strongest among them learned that surrender can be a kind of rest. As you breathe now, sinking deeper into your pillow, you may feel that same rhythm settling around you. The quiet exhale after a long endurance. The softness that comes only when something finally lets go. You are leaving the feast too, stepping out into your own gentle night. And the further you walk from that long, impossible hall, the heavier your eyelids grow, guiding you slowly, peacefully, into sleep.
Tonight, as we step gently into the final chapter of this sleep story, imagine a kingdom shimmering under torchlight, its halls glowing with gold, its tables bending under the weight of a feast so extravagant that chroniclers struggled to record it without sounding like they were telling a myth. This was not a celebration of triumph or a gathering of joy. It was a performance, a spectacle, a single night designed to prove that a king, facing unrest, fear, and whispers of rebellion, still possessed infinite wealth. And yet, it would become one of the most expensive royal feasts in human history, and one of the last sparks that helped collapse an entire kingdom. But for now, picture the scene before the fall. The great hall rises like a canyon of marble and jeweled light. Hundreds of candles glow along balconies carved with lions and griffins. Long tables stretch so far that they seem to dissolve into haze. Servants hurry with careful footsteps, balancing trays of rare fruit, towering platters of roasted game, and golden bowls overflowing with wine as red as a fading sunset. Guests arrive in glittering robes, their expressions carefully arranged to show awe rather than fear. For beneath the perfume and music, something uneasy moves like a shadow beneath the floor. This feast, this mountain of luxury, is not a celebration of prosperity. It is the king's final attempt to show control in a world he is quickly losing. But the guests sit and they smile and they play their roles. Because in royal courts, pretending can be as necessary as breathing. As you wander deeper into this scene, imagine the soundscape softening into a slow rhythm. The clinking of cups becomes steady, like distant wind chimes. The music stretches like warm silk. Even the murmurs of guests fall into a lull, as though the hall is drifting into the same drowsiness that you feel now, a quiet lowering of the day's weight. But outside these walls, the kingdom is unraveling. Crops have failed. Markets have collapsed. People gather in the streets with anger sharp as winter air. And every candle burning inside this palace is paid for with the hunger of those waiting in the dark. Still, the king demands more dishes, more gold, more spectacle. He leans into excess the way a drowning man might cling to anything that floats, even if it drags him deeper. Platters of sugar sculptures, worth more than a farmer's yearly earnings, melt under the heat of torches. Peacock skins dyed blue shimmer under lanterns. A single enormous fish, hauled from a distant sea at impossible cost, lies at the center of the table like a silent omen. No guest dares refuse. Many barely touch the food. They know what's happening outside. They know this feast is not a celebration, but a curtain hiding the cracks of the kingdom. And yet they remain seated, as if leaving their chairs would make the walls collapse faster. Every royal feast you've journeyed through tonight, every strange dish, every silent battle, every glittering hall has carried its own kind of insanity. But none have carried consequences as heavy as this one. This is the feast that pushed an already starving kingdom toward collapse. But remember, we are telling this not as a warning, not as a tragedy, but as a gentle nighttime story. A reminder that even grand empires, like long days, must have an ending. So let the torches flicker softly in your imagination. Let the silk-draped hall blur at the edges. Let the king's desperate glow fade into something distant, like a lantern carried away by the wind. You are safe here, drifting through history not as a witness to suffering, but as a quiet observer of time's gentle way of closing chapters. And as this story continues, the kingdom moves closer to its breaking point, while you move closer to rest.
As the night deepens inside the palace, the king continues his performance of power, unaware that each moment of excess is quietly stitching together the final threads of his downfall. The hall glows brighter as the torches burn lower, creating a strange illusion: light without warmth, brilliance without life. Guests shift in their seats, their eyes tracing the golden plates, the ornaments, the jewels, all glimmering like artificial stars suspended above a dying world. Servants appear with yet another course, their footsteps soft, almost apologetic, as though they too can sense the imbalance, the widening gap between the glittering room and the dark streets beyond the palace walls. Outside, distant murmurs rise like a sea pulling itself toward a storm. But inside, the king raises his goblet again, encouraging his guests to drink, to admire, to applaud the spectacle he has shaped from fear. Imagine the sound, applause that doesn't come from joy, but from obligation. A dull echo along the stone walls, fading before it reaches the high ceiling. And somewhere in that echo, a truth lingers. This feast is not feeding loyalty, it is feeding resentment. Still, the king presses on. He orders dancers, musicians, performers, each more extravagant than the last. The dance steps shimmer through the air like the flutter of moth wings around a flame. The music grows sweeter, slower, sinking into the hall like a warm mist. The performers' faces hide their exhaustion behind painted smiles. They know the kingdom outside is unraveling, yet they continue, their bodies whispering the same silent plea: don't notice, don't question, don't let the illusion break. But illusions always crack, and tonight they begin to crack at the edges, softly, quietly, like hairline fractures forming on glass. First, a servant near the far table stumbles while carrying a tray of crystal cups. The sound is small, a faint clink, barely noticeable, but the king's attention snaps toward it as though the world has shifted. His gaze sharpens, cold and hollow, a reminder that fear rules more strongly than gold. The servant bows deeply, trembling. The guests hold their breaths, but the moment passes, floated away by the next wave of music. Yet something about that moment clings to the air. The hall feels tighter, the candles seem shorter, even the food looks heavier, as though burdened by the weight of everything left unsaid. Outside, the murmurs grow louder, not shouts, not yet, but the kind of restless sound that makes birds take flight before a storm. Inside, the guests exchange subtle glances, glances that say everything their voices cannot. They know they are witnessing history bending under its own excess. As the feast continues, the king unveils his final display of wealth. A mountain of sweet confections shaped like the kingdom itself. Rivers made of flowing sugar. Castles carved of brittle crystal. Fields painted with gold leaf. It is breathtaking. It is magnificent. It is a portrait of a kingdom the people outside no longer recognize. And in that contrast, in that chasm between image and reality, the seeds of collapse begin to bloom. The guests watch, unsure whether to admire or fear what stands before them. They clap weakly. They murmur words of praise, but no one tastes the dessert. No one dares break the fragile sculpture. Perhaps they understand, even half asleep beneath the weight of luxury, that this feast is a requiem disguised as a celebration, a farewell wrapped in sugar, a kingdom carved in sweetness just before it is washed away. As you breathe softly now, imagine drifting through that hall as a quiet ghost, present but untouchable, watching history from a safe distance. Nothing there can harm you. Nothing there can follow you into the night. The carpets soften into mist. The music thins into air. The torches flicker like distant stars. You are moving deeper into the end of the story, deeper into the hush that comes before everything finally breaks. And as the kingdom inches closer to its final moment, you, slowly, gently, inch closer to sleep.
By the time the night reaches its final hours, the great hall feels less like a palace and more like a fragile world floating above its own ruin. The laughter has softened into faint murmurs. The music drifts in thin, trembling threads. Even the torches seem to burn with hesitation, their flame shrinking as though they too sense the kingdom's breath growing shallow. The king sits at the center of it all, shoulders draped in gold, eyes reflecting a brilliance that no longer belongs to him. Around him, the guests, those tired silhouettes adorned in jewels, continue to smile with the kind of politeness that grows brittle under fear. They sip their wine, they raise their cups, they praise the spectacle. But in their hearts, something has changed. They are no longer participants. They are witnesses. Witnesses to a kingdom swallowing itself in glitter and firelight. Outside the walls, the distant murmurs swell into something harsher, the sound of a people starving while their ruler drowns the last of the treasury in wine and gold. The palace guards shift anxiously, the musicians exchange looks edged with dread. Even the servants, trained to stand like shadows, cannot keep their hands from trembling. Yet the king, determined to finish his grand performance, lifts his cup once more. One final toast, one final command to admire his empire carved in sugar and stone. The guests obey, though the air feels heavy enough to crack. And then, in one of those quiet, almost imperceptible moments that shape the fate of kingdoms, the doors at the far end of the hall tremble. The faintest shake, like a heartbeat pressed beneath a floor of stone. The king freezes, the guests fall silent, the musicians stop mid-note. The hall holds its breath, suspended between two worlds, the glittering illusion inside and the rising truth outside. But the doors do not burst open, not tonight. Instead, they return to their stillness. The danger remains distant, like thunder over the horizon. And in that fragile pause, the feast reaches its final breath. The king lowers his cup. It is not dramatic, not monstrous, simply tired. A man finally feeling the weight of everything he has tried to hide under music and wine and gold. He gestures for the musicians to play again, but no one moves. He calls for more wine, but no servant steps forward. Slowly, the king begins to understand. The feast has ended, not by decree, not by design, but by exhaustion deeper than any order can overcome. The hall no longer belongs to him. It belongs to the silence, a silence that stretches outward, slipping into corridors, drifting up stairways, winding through the entire palace like a final, gentle verdict. And you feel that silence too, soft, inevitable, settling through your thoughts the way dusk settles over a quiet field. The guests rise up, not in unison, but like leaves lifting in a slow breeze. Their jewels glimmer faintly, dulled by the weight of what they've witnessed. No one speaks. No one needs to. They drift out of the hall, neither rushed nor reluctant, but simply carried by the current of an ending that has already decided itself. When the last of them disappears into the corridor, the king remains alone. His crown tilts slightly. His breath comes shallow. He gazes at the sugar kingdom before him, the rivers of sweetness, the golden fields, the brittle castles, and for the first time, he sees it not as proof of his power, but as a reminder of how easily beauty collapses when built on hunger. Slowly, gently, the torches dim. The hall blurs. The story softens. You feel the closing wind down wrapping around you like a warm blanket.
You've walked through glittering halls, watched insane royal parties, and seen how even the richest kings cannot outrun time. Now the candles have burned low, the music has faded, and the last royal feast is over. Let the noise of history fall completely silent, and let your mind finally rest.